Hello everyone and welcome to today's podcast. I am Saira from Department of Knowledge and Research Support Services, University of Management and Technology. Today we are going to discuss a very important topic, ethical practices in scientific publications. To have a discussion on this important topic, we are honored to have a very special guest from Howard University, Dr. Rui Diogo.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be part of the podcast. And my name is Rui Diogo. From Portugal, but I did my PhD in Belgium and another PhD in Washington, D.C., where I stayed to teach medical school. So I live now currently in Washington, D.C. 6 months a year, and 6 months a year I travel for my work and anthropological observations. So I'm very happy to be here. It's my first time in Pakistan, so thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, let's start today's conversation because we want to get benefit from your valuable knowledge. So please tell us what actually ethical practices mean and why is it important?
Yes, it's a very actually hot topic nowadays, especially because AI is putting more problems and pressure to the editors and so on to know what is coming really from the authors that are submitting the papers, for instance, for ethical practices, or what is coming from AI that can elaborate some parts or at least link some of the parts. So it's very difficult even nowadays, especially for editors, to deal with this. And ethical practices mean that you have to be sure that not only the ideas are from the authors, right, but the content, even the writing is from the authors. So it's a very important topic nowadays, yeah. To tell the truth, even in that sense of AI doing the content or something is not the worst. The worst for science, more unethical thing, is to manipulate the results.
Right.
Because that is completely out of proportion, right? And in a way, there are two ways that can be done. It can be that you can manipulate directly the results, what is the worst like kind of fraud, scientific fraud, but can also be the way that science is done a bit now, that you have to have the idea before. So let's say I will test the hypothesis that something is something, right? But the problem is that sometimes you already know the results after, and you write the paper as if you were testing something that you already know. And that actually sometimes for an editor that has experience, we can actually kind of see, because normally they say we test A and B, and normally actually we support A, and you see it's too perfect. So they are writing the paper already knowing the results, but you have to pretend when you write the introduction, etc., that you don't know the results, right? You are supposed to pretend that.
Okay, linking with your answer, what are the consequences?
We are talking about life sciences. The most famous fraudulent study that affected a lot the way we saw humans and ourselves was the Piltdown fraud. So the Piltdown fraud was then a researcher in England about 100 years ago. He manipulated the skull, he put the skull of a human, of 1,000 years ago, human, together with the mandible and kind of the part of the body of an orangutan. And then he said, this is the first humans, they were they were actually in England. England is the center of humanity. You know, it was just really making a fraud to say the story that England, that at that time was the center of power, had the first humans. So, and that is the most famous, it's called the Piltdown fraud. And for 49 years, people believe in that. At that time, there was a skull in Africa that actually was the oldest human we did know at that time, but nobody believed it. Why? Because the scientists were mainly Europeans, and they wanted to say that humans came from Europe. Right? So you can see the importance of fraud and how this manipulated completely the ideas. And so it's very important, and I talk a lot about in my books about this kind of fraud and stereotypes.
Terms like plagiarism and fake data, as you just mentioned, the fraudulent data. So could you please explain these terms in very simpler language to our audience so that they may get the idea what are these terms and why these are so important while they are writing scientific papers or publications?
Yes, and it's very important to understand that for scientific papers there are two types of plagiarism. There is the one that we can actually copy the ideas of others and pretend is more ours, but there is actually self-plagiarism that is very common in scientific papers. What does it mean? Let's say that nowadays you have the pressure to publish 10 papers, right? Because you have all this pressure to publish more and more, etc. So you publish one paper, and then the second paper is almost similar, but you send it to another journal, just with some differences. And that you are auto plagiarizing yourself, because you are basically using the same idea to have 2 papers, 3 papers, 4 papers. So the editor should be careful not only with me copying the ideas of others, but me copying my own ideas to have more papers. And there is editors have a tool, many of them in journals like Nature and Science, where automatically AI can see the number of words. Let's say I have 10,000 words that match my own paper, then automatically they know this is auto-plagiarism. That is actually probably the most common now, and there's also to blame science and the way it's done nowadays, that you have to have so many papers that you try to also copy yourself. Basically, you are just repeating the same, but you send to 10 different journals. Because an editor here in Lahore, they probably don't know about, but that tool is not available for everybody. So it's difficult sometimes to detect that you are self-plagiarizing. It's more common now that you copy yourself and others copying you. That is perhaps one of the biggest problems in science nowadays.
Okay, Dr. Ray, as we know that whatever the work we have done, ultimately we have to publish somewhere in any particular specific journals, right? So how can journal editors or reviewers maintain, or they can play a role in maintaining the integrity, or you can say the standards of ethical practices in publications? How can they play their major role?
Yes, that's a very good question, because editors face more pressure now again than just 100 years ago, because there are so many things that can happen. You can be using AI, you can copy yourself. So the editors have special tools sometimes available to them. For instance, I told you they can compare the number of words that are similar in one paper versus the other paper of the same author. They also can compare with other authors. So they are tools, but still they have to be much aware. So also they need to have social networks. That's, for instance, oh, this person is publishing about monkeys in the Himalayas. I know someone that does this work, so is the same person or not, etc. So you can triangulate a bit, but it requires a lot from the editors now. It's a huge work. What is interesting is that editors also are not so much rewarded by it, if you think in a way, and especially reviewers, that are the most important thing in academic publishing, they are not rewarded at all. They don't receive any money. We are just doing it for the sake of it. And the publishers make a lot of money. So the publisher itself, the company, is making a lot of money. Many of these companies now that you have to pay online, right? But the editor receives almost nothing, and the reviewers receive nothing, and the authors don't receive nothing and normally have to pay. So the whole system is inverted in a strange way that puts pressure to everybody except the publisher that is making millions of dollars with the system, right? Yes. So it's a very complex situation.
So if we talk about at the organizational level, how can universities or research institutions can promote, you can say, the ethical research culture among students?
That's a very good question, and that probably has to be changed now, adapted to the new realities. So first of all, they should have literally, I think, introduced classes of ethical behavior, right? Because now we have to really be aware of that. From the beginning, perhaps in the first year of, let's say, biological science, life science, ethical behavior, right? Have also one class that addresses the problem of AI, that shows the good tools of AI, but also addresses the problem of overusing AI, right? And probably the organization itself, the university itself, should try to change the rankings, so we don't also just make more importance and hire people with more papers, but instead of quality papers, like 1 quality paper versus 10 papers.
All right. Now, if we talk about the journals where we published our data or research, which is more important, so what are predatory journals, do you think, and how they harm?
Everything is colliding at the same time to create a chaos in science. It is also difficult because then people that are anti-science can use this to say, oh, this paper is not good, science is not good. Why the predatory journals are starting now? Because there is the pressure to have many papers. Exactly. So if you want to have a promotion, you need to publish many papers. You cannot publish a quality paper in Nature, so you just send to predatory journals and your number of papers is augmenting. Now the predatory journals use that to make money. They say, okay, just pay $1,000 and we publish anything. Many of the predatory journals, they don't even have editors. It's just an automatic process. They just publish like that.
We can say the pressure on publishing more and more should be reduced, and we should focus on quality instead of just quantity.
Yes, and not accepting the model, because
it leads most of the time towards more unethical practices.
And you know what is even the biggest problem for people that are not scientists, that for people that are walking in the street that have nothing to do with science, is that when we have grants, like I have $1 million grants, right? I'm coming actually paid with my grant for India, and I use them now in Pakistan. Those grants come from where? From taxpayers. poor people in Minnesota, poor people in the United States are paying taxes. That these taxes come from my grant, right? I'm using right now, my hotel is paid by those people, right? And not only that, when you have a grant, sometimes now, because the system is so corrupted, the grant itself, if you have $1 million grant, $100,000 are already for publishers, because they know we need to pay money to publishers. So poor people in Minnesota are paying taxes for me to pay to Springer and to publishers that are corrupt, you know? So it's a really corrupt system in a way that is difficult to change right now. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Rui. Now I want to know your perception about the different cultures of the world on these ethical practices. Like, does it create any impact with respect to the culture?
So actually, yes, it puts more pressure on, let's say, second and third world countries. Because first of all, they don't have the money a priori to pay to these predatory journals, right? They also have more pressure to plagiarize, because they want also to have more papers if they want to have a grant in the United States or if they want to go to Europe. And then there is the pressure of the English itself, right? Not being the first language. So you have less likely to publish in the best journals, and then you go more predatory. So it does impact much more, because many of them, even if they're quality, they will not be accepted. It's not only the factor that the English is worst, it's also the networks. If the editor does not know a name or sees a name from Uganda, even the editor in a biased, unconscious bias, they will be less likely than if you are from Washington University. Right? So all these things play. That's exactly what I write nowadays. So this is really the topic that I mainly write, these kind of biases that make networks very difficult. I can say by my own life, it's the first time I'm saying in public, because I wanted to be retired before I say this. I know it for myself. I did my first PhD in Belgium. I am the same person. I have the same quality. I did my first PhD in Belgium. I could publish in impact factor 3 or 4, like Journal of Morphology, etc. That was the maximum. I was doing good science, but that was the maximum. Why? Because I was in Belgium. I went to do a PhD, the second PhD at George Washington University. Now I publish in Nature, the best journals in the world. I did not change. Of course, the topic changed a bit. Humans are more in vogue than fish. But it's not only that, because now when they see my name, I'm from George Washington University. My professor was the most famous paleontologist in the world. So all these things play a role. My life really showed me, if you are in Belgium or you are in USA, is very different, right? All these things are different. So science is, unfortunately, science is pure and noble, but academia is not. Academia is networks and powers. That's why actually my book is The Power of Place, not only of Darwin, but I know the power of place because I am in the capital of the power, right? And it's different the way I'm seeing in the world. It's different where I can publish. I could not publish in Nature easily if I was in Belgium. It was much more difficult to me. So it's a huge complex question.
Okay, lastly, I would like you to give any message if you want to say to our young researchers or students or upcoming researchers.
Yes, I would say that just try to do science more than academy. Just try to do really good work that you think is valuable for the community and publish it if you think that is really valuable. Not only publish in a journal that is dignified and that is noble, right? But also make a way, like the podcast you are doing, to transmit science, not only in papers, because they are now the predatory journals also have a problem. They want to have the monopoly, but you have things like podcasts, like other things that can also talk about science without needing to go. Of course, you need to publish the paper scientifically, but you can still talk about these things, right? If you are in Pakistan or whatever it is, you can also talk in other ways that can promote. So they should really try to make good work and valuable work more.
Everyone needs to play their role.
Precisely, to be more conscious, and that's what you are doing is really valuable to talk about that, you know. I did not expect that those were the questions, but it's a really good idea to talk about that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Rui, for being here with us and sharing your experience and valuable thoughts. And I hope this is going to be beneficial for our researchers and students. And thank you so much, our audience, for joining us today. I hope this is going to be credible or worthy information for all of you. Thank you so much. See you next time.